Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome back to All for United. It's been a crazy old week with content and all things like that, but I'll have to apologise from the start. I feel like absolute shit. It's going out after Watershed, I believe, so I can say that. But joined as ever, Amy and Tom, my two championship representatives. How are you both doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Not too bad.
Good, thanks, mate.
Glad to hear it. We were having a bit of a joke backstage that the last time we did this show, I think it was after the 5-0 loss to Liverpool, and it doesn't feel like much has changed since then. The manager's changed, but it doesn't feel like a lot has changed. So we're going to be discussing all that towards the end, talking about United. But obviously, this show is mainly about our promising youngsters, so we'll start on those. But I think just before we get into all of that, and be sure to get your questions in as well. I'll try and get through as many as I can. We'll talk about just briefly the FA Cup results of the weekend. Tom, I'll start with you. Obviously, you were quite vocal on Twitter about this. Your 1-0 loss to Plymouth. How? I think didn't you get a red card early on and things like that? How do you feel that game went? And was it a tie you were expected to win?
No, to be honest, I just had that feeling because I didn't expect us to take many fans anyway. Because FA Cup third round against a League One side, we're not actually in form at the time anyway. I didn't expect there to be much atmos, and then you hear there's 3,000 Plymouth fans traveling like 400 odd miles. I feel like it'd be wrong if they didn't win. So I wasn't too surprised that we lost, but realistically, when you look at it on paper, Championship versus League One, you'd like to think that we could pick up a result. But no, of course we didn't, especially being at home as well. And I suppose, obviously, you mentioned the red card for George Friend. At the time, I was convinced, no, it's not a red at all. It's all the referee's fault. But then afterwards, I'm like, yeah, no, it was definitely a red card. I mean, the first challenge, it was needless. It was literally off the pitch. He just gave him a shove. Just one of those pointless things, and that's obviously had a greater effect later down the line, and probably completely changed the game, to be honest, because I don't think either side really dominated the game before the red card. I'd say we probably had more possession. But neither side really had many chances. And then as soon as the red card happened, it was all Plymouth, and you knew they were going to win. We'd have been lucky to take it to penalties, and that was the only way we were going to get anything from that game. But it's done now. It's been and gone. But our biggest problem is our lack of creativity, and that's where Chong comes in, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back around to him in a moment, so don't you worry about that. And Amy, I believe you were quite happy with kind of your performance. I think there was a red card in this game as well. 3-2 loss to Southampton. How did you feel about that one?
Yeah, it was quite frustrating after all, and really we could have won it. And I'm frustrated. It was kind of typical Swansea at the moment, very sloppy defending. We're building up to these goals, patient build-up play. Once they had their person sent off, we started to kind of take control, possession. There were chances being created, and obviously eventually got the equaliser, and then we made it to extra time, which is, to do that against a Premier League side, yeah, sure, they had 10 men. But, Southampton are a weird one because they're like, I don't personally think they're anything special, but they're organised, like they're good, they've got a good squad, they're pretty solid, and they were really hard to break down, but obviously got a brilliant goal in kind of first half of extra time, and then 10 seconds later they equalise because Swansea players just switch off apparently when they score a goal. It's been an ongoing thing this season for us, so hopefully they've really started to learn their lesson about that. But it was okay. It was a good performance. I think we held our own. I think it wasn't embarrassing. You always get worried, don't you, that it's going to be embarrassing when you play a Prem team. Frustrated that we didn't take it. Few people off because of COVID, and we actually haven't played a game since the 11th of December either. So it'd been pretty much 4 weeks since playing a game. So considering all that, it wasn't that bad. But obviously a shame to not progress.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Spin a positive on a loss. United fans need to try and take some of that. You mentioned Chong earlier, Tom. I just want to mention him before we move on to the players that obviously can play at the moment. And I was watching our show back that we did in October, and one of the things you said actually is you're slightly worried by his injury record. And obviously, about 2 weeks later, after the show went out, he got injured for the season. So I guess kind of the question is, I think you just briefly touched on it. Are Birmingham missing Chong? Is that kind of the player that was holding your team together almost?
100%. It's very clear and obvious for everyone to see. I mean, every single post-match conference Lee Bowyer does at the moment. I'd be surprised if he doesn't mention Chong. Literally every single one, every loss. It's like, ever since we lost Chongi, we've just not been the same side. So, yeah, and that literally is as basic as it is. Obviously, Riley McGree stepped in into Chong's role and did well. He provided that creative spark, but unfortunately, Riley McGree, we only had him on loan until January. Went back to Charlotte, this new MLS club that's starting up, this new franchise thing. We were under the impression that Charlotte didn't want to sell. Later, we find out he's now off to Celtic for £3 million. So that's just delightful. But no, we just have no creative spark at the moment. We have a lot of injuries, and they all are to literally players that can actually pass a ball or cross a ball. So we're just playing with straight up battlers at the moment that they know how to put a tackle in, but they couldn't, actually change a game the way Chong could. But yeah, no, we miss, for one, is obviously his creativity, but actually his versatility as well. So, when we're making changes in a game, or if we're changing up the formation to sort of accommodate the flow of the game, we're not able to do that as much as we were because we miss Chong. And obviously I spoke highly about how well he could actually defend as well as attack. So we do just miss that one luxury player, and we don't have any left anymore. So yeah, I think that's why we're being linked with quite a few sort of, I'd say, big talents like Ahmed Diallo, because that is the sort of sparkle that we're missing at the moment.
Yeah, definitely, and that's another player that I'm going to circle back around to a bit later on. Just quickly on the last thing I've got on Chong, do you think he'll go back there after his injury? Because I think his injury is till the end of the season. Can you see him being tempted to go back?
I think if we had money, yes, but we don't, so no. So no, sadly, I don't know. It depends. When does Chong's contract expire? I feel like it's either this year or next year.
I'm pretty sure it's this summer, actually.
Yeah,
it's not long.
If that was the case, I know we definitely try, but I think we'd be well off wages wise. We're struggling. Let me put it to you this way: we're struggling to offer more wages than Derby, who are in administration right now. In the whole Diallo saga thing. So no, we're a bit short for cash at the moment, and that's why we're trying to offload some of the big earners like Harley Dean, maybe even Neil Etheridge. Because they just don't really have a part in the team anymore. But we have a lot of players like that who aren't actually really involved in the squad, but they're on big dollars. So, if we can ship out some of those players, then I think Bowyer would give any limb in his body to get Chong to this club. So, yeah, I think we try, but there'll probably be bigger championship influences come next season that'll be able to snap him up.
Yeah, it's a shame really, because I remember obviously speaking on the last show about Chong, and he was doing so well, and then to get an injury, it's not like it was a couple of weeks, a whole season injury. It's just his career. I think, like you said, Tom, you mentioned his injury record's not been great with United, and it seems like it's another kick in the teeth for him just as he was getting settled somewhere. And obviously I know it was only a loan, but just as he was starting to show his qualities, he's out for a season and kind of halts that. Talking of mid-season moves, it kind of leads on nicely to Ethan Laird. Now, obviously, I can obviously come to you, Amy, first on it. Very simply, obviously, just your initial thoughts on it. When you saw that he was being recalled, obviously, we didn't quite know where to begin with, but just your initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, gutted to start with because he's got a great attitude. He's been a big part of the system. Obviously, he has a great relationship with Russell Martin. He was with him at MK Dons. He's brought him over to Swans. So yeah, I'm quite shocked. I was quite shocked when I first saw it, for sure.
Do you think there was anything Swansea could have done to try and keep him? Obviously, I know ultimately it's United's decision to recall players as and when they want, but do you think there's anything that they could have maybe done to persuade him? Because he was doing so well. The same with Chong in many ways. He was doing so well at Swansea.
Yeah, my only assumption is that they want him to play in a back four. I'm assuming that is the main reason. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so. I think they would maybe make the wrong decision if they need him to play in a back four and they want him to be in a side pushing for promotion. Then sure, Bournemouth is the right team. But in terms of like a system that works for him and works well with him, coaching staff that he knows and are very invested in him as a player. It might, you feel a bit like maternal, and you think, what if he goes over to Bournemouth and they don't care about him as much, and then he sort of gets left and doesn't play as much, because that's bad. So you want these people to play. He's someone who has the potential to play for Man United, and you think, what does this guy need? Probably game time. So I hope he gets it. I hope he doesn't sit on the bench, because he's a 100% starter for us. So it's kind of not sure which way it will go at the moment. Depends how Bournemouth use him.
And before I come back to yourself, Tom, maybe just quickly on, I know you mentioned obviously his attributes in the last show, but what kind of player for Man United fans who not necessarily don't watch the Championship week in, week out, what kind of player are Bournemouth getting?
A lot of pace, a lot of determination. Why I'm interested in the back four is that I don't think he's a brilliant defender, but I think I could even see him on the wing in the future. I think he's that sort of player. He's attacking minded. He thinks that way rather than, he does his best, but against a kind of 6'3" winger, he's going to struggle. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see. But yeah, he just gets so stuck in, and he's gifted with his feet. Yeah, he's great with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Man United could obviously we've got in our first team some question marks over our fullbacks at the moment. Obviously, I think the left side is probably more shored up. No pun intended there. I didn't actually mean that one. It's more settled, I should say. But the right hand side, I mean, if Laird can make which I'm assuming he will do. In fact, that's my question actually to both of you. Do you think he'll kind of carry on his success at Bournemouth? Obviously, they're top of the league at the moment. They're doing well, but then that might not necessarily be a good thing because he just got the relationship at Swansea, and then halfway through, they're pulling him out and putting him in a different system.
I think it happens. I'm sure Tom will agree. It does happen sometimes as a championship club. A sort of standard mid-table championship club at the moment. People leave, and often you think that was too early. We mentioned Dan James before. I just think if he had one more season with us, and it happens a lot. I feel it's like, there's lots of potential, lots of talent, and then Joe Rodon's prime example at Tottenham at the moment. Sure, Tottenham bought him, good fee, probably not big enough, but he's a great defender, but he's not getting on the pitch. What does that do to a player's development? I'm no expert, but it can't be good.
No, I agree, and especially for a younger player. It's like I said, I think there's a comment there from Andrew talking about the relationship, obviously, with the manager, Russell Martin. Obviously, he had that at MK Dons as well, I believe. So to have a manager, I think, that would believe in you and push you in directions that would make Laird uncomfortable as well, which is a good thing for his development. And I do think it's a strange one. I hope that we're wrong, and I hope he does carry on for Bournemouth. I hope he does nail down a starting spot, because the last thing we want to see is if he goes there and he's just a backup. I don't know. I don't watch the Championship, so I don't know Bournemouth's kind of situation, but you'd think he'd go straight into the side with how he played at Swansea.
On that comment as well, I saw also that Russell Martin had no idea that there was an intention to pull him away either, which is a weird one.
That's typical United, that is. And Tom, can you see him being a success at Bournemouth as well? Because like I just said, obviously Diallo and Wan-Bissaka in the first team. If he does have a good second half of the season, he could push those two next year.
I think it's an interesting one. I think obviously he's gone to Bournemouth. Bournemouth needed a backup, preferably that could play both sides, mainly down to Zamora going to AFCON. And Zamora has probably been one of Bournemouth's biggest performers this season when he's not injured. I think it's probably going to be a different sort of challenge for Laird. Obviously, he'll probably be playing a bit more on the left than he would have at Swansea, because obviously he was predominantly on the right hand side. So maybe it's more of a different challenge. That might be the way United see it. Or I like to think in my head, maybe it's down to, Bournemouth are probably going to get promoted, so get the player around some success, and see what that does for him mentally. Because I suppose at United, that's the sort of mentality you want, that winning feeling, that success. And Swansea are a good side, but you're not far from us at the moment.
Yeah,
So
luckily, a few games to play, luckily, but yeah, it's not great.
yeah. So I could only think it's down to that. Maybe just maybe playing around a bit more quality. But on the terms of maybe next season and pushing at United, for me personally, I can't see him particularly breaking into the United side unless obviously his position did change, like you mentioned, Amy. And I think he will be a Premier League player. I just couldn't see it at United, and it's a shame, but it's the reality of things. If United want to get back to, the top level, I think you need to look at bigger players than that. But it's also good that you're trying to use more sort of homegrown talent, because that you go back to the 80s. That was how Sir Alex pretty much did it. Got United going. It was just literally picking up youth players, and that was more the old-fashioned way to do it. It's a bit more difficult to do that these days. But if you want to build a proper player, a proper English homegrown player for yourself, then the Championship is probably the best place to send them. So it makes sense. But I suppose it'll be interesting to see how he learns. But it's a shame that he's been moved when he was in good form. I didn't really understand it, but hopefully it works out for him.
I can see him at a Crystal Palace like the rest of our loans. All of our loans.
Definitely.
They're all there. Gehi, Gallagher, they all just end up there. So maybe he'll be there next.
Roden will be at a Burnley next or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of comments agree with you, actually. I just brought a few of them up talking about now, Amy. I know you won't. We're going to come back to how you guys feel about your respective clubs later on in the show, but there's a lot of comments, obviously, about Swansea being near the relegation zone and obviously Bournemouth being at the top, and whether that is, as has just been mentioned, whether that's a factor that they want him around a winning side at the moment. But then again, if he's playing on a side that's not necessarily winning, the draw with that, he's going to be defending more, so he's going to be learning his trade in defence.
Yeah, it's still a good experience, isn't it? Either way, but I do understand if they wanted to create a champion, then maybe he needs to be playing with Bournemouth.
I mean, just quickly on that, like I said, because I'm not an avid watcher of it. What kind of system do Bournemouth play? Is it 4 at the back, 5? Because obviously Swansea play 5, don't they?
Yeah, it's been 4 with Bournemouth the whole time, I think, hasn't it?
Yeah, Bournemouth play a 4-3-3. So as far as I'm aware, that's what they tend to stick to. And I'm not surprised, because that was the way Parker played at Fulham. I mean, when he went in at Fulham, that was the system Fulham were playing anyway, and he's just never, ever changed it. So he sort of adopted that as his own. And, it's worked for him. It's clearly working for him. So I'm not surprised he's not changing it. They have the quality in their squad for their fullbacks to actually act as wing backs at times, because when you have so much quality in your squad, you've got players that can come back and cover and do a good job of it. So he'll still be able to sort of play different areas of the pitch, because he'll probably be given a little bit more free roam than he was at Swansea, because you can do that when you've got more quality in a side. But yeah, it depends. It depends, because I don't really think 4-3-3 is the United style these days. So it's interesting that they've sent him there to play that sort of a formation, when I'd probably say Swansea's system was a little bit closer to Premier League style football, at least. We'll go with that.
Yeah, I think just looking at some of these, obviously, I think that we could talk about the 2 fullbacks for a while. There's a lot of talk about getting led back in. Obviously, we saw what he did at Swansea, so I can understand those conversations circling back around, especially because our right hand side fullbacks, I think many would argue, are not fully performing.
I was all the time. I'm
just going to just quickly change it up. Obviously, talk about Mengi for a little bit. Obviously, that came out of nowhere, really. I think it was all expected that he was going to move, but I think, as Tom, you tagged me in on Twitter. I think we had a bit of back and forth when that came about, because it seems like Birmingham and which another player, obviously Ahmed, we'll talk about in a bit. It seems like Birmingham and United are getting a bit of a relationship going in terms of our youngsters. Just quickly on his first game against Plymouth, how did he do? Did he impress in any way? Or
Well, he certainly impressed. He was my man of the match in the Blues team. So I suppose that's a good place to start, really. No, from start to finish, Mengi was not what I expected at all. I definitely expected pace, and that was on show, but I didn't expect him to be as comfortable as he was. And actually, he showed a lot of leadership traits, which was, for me, the biggest surprise. He was yelling at our senior players, and I'm just like, well, this kid's got something. This kid's got something. And especially, I wasn't really looking forward to his debut that much because of what I'd heard from Derby fans. Because unfortunately, I have a lot of mates that are Derby fans from the area I grew up in, and they didn't really rate him too highly. Thought he was probably playing at too high a level. But I think, hearing comments like that will drive you to be better anyway. And players can do different things at different clubs. I think, Chong's a good example. Never really pulled up any trees anywhere else, and then comes to Blues, and look at him now. And, a lot of that can be to do with coaching staff, players, managers, anything, absolutely anything. So, no, Mengi's come in and he's certainly made a name for himself, and he'll 100% start our next championship game. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. But he adds a different sort of athleticism that we didn't have before. Obviously, we've lost Dion Sanderson as he's been recalled by Wolves. So we needed a quick centre-back to come into this side. And we've managed to get quicker, surprisingly. So, very, very happy with that. And no, he didn't do himself any harm in his first performance. He definitely didn't make any mistakes either. If anything, he looked like the senior player, not the youngster that's just come in on loan.
It's interesting to say that about the kind of leadership traits, because I think we make comparisons all the time with the youngsters. There was Laird and Williams coming through at the same time. There was Chong, Gomez, and Greenwood, and then you had Axel Tuanzebe, who's a little bit older, and then you had Mengi, the kind of up and coming centre backs at the time. Obviously, Axel's had multiple loans, and he's obviously gone on loan again now. Doesn't seem like he's going to have a full United career. Was centre back kind of? I think you've just answered my question there. Was centre back a position that Birmingham were looking at that they needed? And I think, obviously, going back to what you guys said in the last show, that centre backs need to be fully physical in the Championship because of how the league is. Do you think he's going to be able to cope with that as well?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it was an interesting test against lower league opposition anyway, because I'd say lower league sides in the EFL are actually more physical than Championship sides because of that being down to, the quality you have in your squad. Because if you have more sort of flair players like you might in the Championship, then 9 times out of 10, they don't have much strength. So, you go into League One, League Two, it's a bit more nitty gritty, physical, bash each other up, and whoever scores a tap in wins the game sort of thing. So, no, I definitely expected some quality, obviously, from Plymouth. I'm not going to bash them that much, but I expected it to be a physical game, and it was. It really was. They had some huge players, some really, really tall players. So Mengi had a lot to cope with, even their strikers, pacey and tall in Ryan Hardy, who's quite a unique striker in himself to have height and such pace as well. So not an easy first test for him, that's for sure, but he definitely handled it well. And I think his anticipation of strikers making runs is fantastic. I've not seen that sort of a footballing brain level in our defence for quite a while, at least 5 years, which, to be honest, says a lot. But it is what it is. I think we could do with a loan all over the pitch at this point. Get a team of 11 Mengis, it'll do. But definitely very happy with that signing. And he's a well-spoken lad as well, very well-spoken. His interviews so far, I've enjoyed listening to him. So I look forward to seeing more of him, and I just hope he can stay fit.
Fingers crossed. As Andrew said there, if he can replicate any of what Chong did, obviously, at Birmingham, the loan will work out well for both parties.
Yeah, if he could dribble past a few as well, that would be nice.
Stuart, absolutely no worries. John, exactly the same. Nice to see you. I guess my last kind of question on Mengi then. Moving forward, is this another player that obviously it's difficult, obviously basing it off one game? Chong, there was a kind of a handful of games to choose from. Is it kind of a move that you could see that could be made permanent? I think obviously you said earlier about the wages that Birmingham are struggling with at the moment. Could you see Mengi potentially being moved permanently there?
I could, yeah. I actually think Mengi's more realistic than Chong, definitely. I don't. Obviously, if he does immensely well with Blues, then you never know, there might be higher championship interest. But no, Mengi is actually one that I could see us pulling off, to be honest. I don't think he's ever going to reach the heights of Manchester United. But, he could make the Premier League one day. But right now, he is championship level, probably mid-table championship level player. But he's definitely got the potential to be high championship, low Premier League. And I think he could do that with Blues. So why not? Why not? They're just, I feel like it'd be, if we could secure Mengi, I feel like it'd be a real building block for the future under Bowyer. It'd definitely be a signing I'd be very happy about. So hopefully he does impress, but not too much. And we can keep him.
Definitely. It's something we spoke about on the last show, isn't it? That just because youngsters at these big clubs, if they don't make it at the big club, it's not necessarily a failure. Even if they go on to have a career in the Championship, that's a good career. Yeah. With the kind of the money that's involved, and it obviously something that leads me on nicely to talk about.
I wish I was a National League footballer. They still earn fairly good money these days.
It is exactly, that's what I said. Anywhere in the football pyramid, I think if you make it there, obviously as long as you don't go I think it's just an ego thing, isn't it? If you go from the heights at Man United and then all of a sudden you're playing for let's say Plymouth, for example, that's the first thing that comes to mind. It's kind of that ego thing, isn't it? As a young 20-year-old, you're like, well, I was there, now I'm down here in League One or something like that. So it can be difficult for these players. But I just wanted to talk about the Championship, actually, because we've got obviously a few players there now. We've got looking to loan more players there. Amy, I'll come to you first on it then. Look, what is the draw for these youngsters to go to the Championship? Like, why should players go there?
I guess game time is the key thing. Obviously, a lot of these players will play under 23s, I assume, as well. But surely game time experience, and also, I guess, a different type of football in that, we've said it is more physical. It's more, it's a bit grittier. It's a bit less stop-start, in my opinion. Like, I watch Premier League games and people just fall over and the ref blows up, and I just think, it's not football for me. Whereas I do think there is that element of like more old school football in the Championship and League One. I think it's got a bit more about it. But I mean, the levels aren't like you only have to look at, Fulham, Bournemouth, Watford, kind of Norwich. Like the levels merge, right? Like there is a merge of the levels, and it's just a stepping stone, isn't it? I think that's the key for a player's development, is that it's a step. From kind of under 21s, under 23s, whatever that is, into the Championship, up to the Prem, if they've got that sort of talent. I mean, some obviously go straight up to the Prem, and some do well, some don't. But you sometimes you think, oh, they could do with a loan. it's like a little comment, isn't it? They could do with a loan somewhere, yeah. And it's the same for Championship as well. Like we've got a few younger players who've come up through the academy, and we've some of the younger players we've brought in, and they go out on loan. We've got someone at Plymouth, we've got a couple at Lincoln, and you see them scoring goals. They start developing their confidence, and then at some point you just bring them back and you put them in the system, and you hope that they've improved.
And Tom, same question to yourself. Like, obviously, what you've obviously watched Championship for. That no disrespect there, but obviously you've probably watched the Championship more than most of us. Is how do you what is Championship football like, I guess, and why, again, same question, why should youngsters look at that as maybe a stepping stone?
The best, I think, is the best way to put it, to be honest. Championship is, and probably will always be, even if we got back to the Premier League, Championship would still be my favourite league. It's one to watch. I'd recommend it to anybody because it's so exciting. I mean, Blackburn is a prime example at the moment. Got battered 7-0 by Fulham. Yeah. I predicted them to finish just above the bottom three this season. They are now second in the league, I believe. So, it's crazy what a run of form could do, but you only see something that drastic these days in the Championship. And that is also a very young side, that Blackburn side. So there's so many good teams. And to be honest, surprisingly, I'd say the better teams are actually the younger teams. So I think that in itself is a selling point for young players to want to go to the Championship, because the young teams seem to do the best. That's probably down to the fast pace. The only thing they do have to adjust to, which we've mentioned so many times, is it's so much more physical than academy football. So it's a big step up. Some make it and some don't. I think you have to have the right motives and the right desire, and you'll improve gradually anyway. It will certainly toughen you up as a human being if it doesn't physically anyway. So, yeah, that's sort of my top and bottom of the Championship in itself. But I think it's the best place for players to grow, particularly young Premier League players, because I think if you make it in the Championship, more than likely you're going to make it in the Premier League, unless your name is Alexander Mitrovic, but they don't make many players like that. So, yeah, there we are.
Yeah, he's absolutely terrible. Isn't he? He must still be league top scorer by now, surely.
Yeah, he's probably going to break the record.
Yeah, he's going to be ridiculous what he's doing.
Just look at some of his comments there. Yeah, I think you get a lot of agreement. The Championship is very watchable. League 1 and 2 less so. League 1 does. It has a few. I agree with that comment. It's got a few decent at the top, but I think if you go below that and you go into the mid-table, it does add some excitement though. As you said, you can never really predict it. When I'm putting my bets on of a weekend, it's you can never really
literally anything. And you can like Tom said, you can play a team like we beat like West Brom somehow. And then they'll go and beat someone else 5-0, and then that team will beat someone else 5-0, and you just think it doesn't make any sense at all. And
I mean, you lost to us, and we're terrible. So
yeah, we're tired today. I think what actually I've just realised is it's that the in between, they've just mentioned League 1 and 2, right? And we've mentioned the Prem. It's kind of like a happy medium, I feel. In the Prem, it is a bit more predictable. There's the occasional, shock result, but it's Chelsea are playing, wonder who's going to win that. And most of the time it's that, but like you say, you have Huddersfield versus Blackburn and you just go, well, who knows? And I think that is a big pull factor for the Championship, I feel.
I'm going to put you both on the spot here a little bit. If you had to pick one team to avoid as a youngster, which team would you say not to go to?
Cardiff.
It's easy for you to say because your rival's still in the same league as you. Ours, as usual, is above us. No surprise there. I don't know. It's a tough one, really. I feel like you wouldn't want to go to a recently relegated Premier League side. I think that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I could give. I wouldn't want to go there because they're still going to have so much Prem quality in their squad that you'd find it hard to break in. So I think your best place to go, game time, would obviously be one of the lower expectation sort of sides. So, a Blackpool or a Peterborough. I think Swansea have high expectations, but you've just got a long building process, because to go from disgusting Steve Cooper football to pretty Russell Martin football, it's a big jump.
No, you're right, but a Blackpool or a Middlesbrough or
any of them. I mean, I think Balogun going to Middlesbrough is a crazy shining for this division in general, because he's one that I would have expected to see at a low Premier League side before he actually went to Arsenal. I wouldn't have even thought of the Championship. And same for Ahmed Diallo, to be honest. I can't lie. I'm surprised that it's looking at the Championship, but that just shows how much the league is growing. And in fairness to League 1 and League 2, I think they're growing as well, particularly League 1. You look at League 1 table, you'd be interested in watching a few more games because of how close it is. I mean, even last season, League 1 was bonkers, and you'd be shocked how many big clubs are in League 1 at the moment. At least 10 former Premier League teams in the last 10, 15 years. So, it definitely League 1's growing as well. So that's still a pull for younger players too. And League Two will probably get there in due time anyway. I mean, that's where we send most of our loanees. Our academy isn't good enough for League One, unfortunately. It's only good enough for League Two.
I think if anything speaks volumes for the kind of growth of League One, I think you have to look at I think I can't remember the official name. It's some kind of work experience thing that United are doing where we're sending 2 youngsters out together to a League One or a Championship, a low Championship side, just to go and train with the squad, not necessarily play. I think it works on like I don't know how the contracts work, but we're sending them together. So they've buddied up together, go send them to a League One side for 2-3 weeks, train with them, and then obviously bring them back just to get that exposure. So I think that speaks volumes as to the league's growth there. Yeah, Stu's bang on. There's no pose in the Championship. Anyone who watches this channel will know Stu is not a full-on fan of the modern game, so to speak, particularly in the Premier League. And shout out to Maisie. Make sure you subscribe to Devils United as well. You mentioned Ahmad there. I just want to briefly touch on him because obviously the reports the last few days. Now, when we were last on, the reason he didn't move in the summer obviously was he got injured before he went. It was either PSV or Feyenoord. I can't remember where it was now. But he turned down Sheffield reportedly because he didn't want to play in the Championship, I believe. Now he's being linked with bottom of the league Derby County and potential relegation team in Birmingham. Can either of you, obviously Tom, I'll come to you first now as a Birmingham fan. Can you see that happening? Ahmad maybe going down there after being linked to a European side in the summer.
As the days go by, I think it becomes more likely because it's still spoken about. I mean, even for Fabrizio Romano to get involved, there must be something in it. But yeah, no, I'd like to hope he could come to Blues, but it just doesn't sound right when you say it. Like Ahmed Diallo to Birmingham City when he didn't want to go to Sheffield United. I can't see it. I don't know why he'd want to come to us. I mean, it'd probably be good for his development because I can assure you he would get game time. But yeah, no, I feel like he'd be better off maybe at a Derby because, yeah, obviously their situation is unique. That would be a learning curve in itself. But your manager is one of not only Manchester United's greatest goal scorer, but one of the greatest strikers of all time. And him being a forward player himself, I think, you've got to look at who you're going to learn off. Do you want to learn off a rough and tough midfielder in Lee Bowyer, or do you want to learn from one of the greatest English attackers of all time, especially when you're on loan from Man United? I think there's an easier option to choose here. But it wouldn't surprise me if he went elsewhere. I'm surprised, even a club like Swansea, I'm surprised Swansea aren't looking at him or anybody else for that matter. I mean, I was shocked when I saw he was linked with Barnsley. I think that's one you can definitely rule out right now.
It would be a bad move, I think. No offense to Barnsley.
Exactly. I was laughing when we were linked with him, but I laughed a lot more when I saw Barnsley.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would pick that Barnsley in that respect. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's interesting because when I initially saw it, obviously, we had a joke about, his role models potentially at Birmingham that he could have and things like that. But I thought maybe he could slot into that Chong role because for us, when he's played, he's only really had chances through the middle, maybe. But so maybe he could play that Chong role at Birmingham, and that might be why you look at, or maybe that's why United are looking at Birmingham as an option because of how well Chong did there. So maybe that is the number one.
Anything will do at this point. But yeah, no, I'm not. From what I have seen of Ahmed Diallo, he's definitely more creative than avoid Barnsley. I agree. It's not even a pretty place to go. I wouldn't recommend it. So I've been to Barnsley away on a Tuesday night when it's hailing, so that wasn't too fun. But that's classic Championship weather for you right there. Proper away day. But no, I just think Ahmed Diallo surprised me a bit from what I've seen of him. I expected him to be more of a goal scorer, but from what I've actually seen of him, he can play those long balls across, that proper accurate crossfield pass, bit like a quarterback, some of the passes I've seen him. But then again, YouTube can make anybody look good, so I take that with a pinch of salt. But then again, he's a Manchester United youngster. You paid a fair wad for him, so he must be all right.
Yeah, 100%. When we signed him from Italy, the reports out of Italy were obviously didn't want to lose him from that league, and it was a very, very good prospect that that we were signing. So
that Man United have managed to ruin already.
we'll get on to United in a bit, and
The poor kid is linked with Barnsley. That's what you've done to him.
Niall, I see you in the comments. I'm going to bring that up one more time. I might just pin that. That should be the title of the show. We'll do a show between the three of us, just avoid Barnsley. And I think just off the back of what you've just said, I'm assuming you assume that's a good move for him if he did go there.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I think it'd be great. It's obviously a lot of people get mistaken in what is the second city of England. A lot of people would assume it's Manchester, but Birmingham is here. We are here. Feel free to come and say hello.
That's brave on a United fan channel, right?
Yeah. No, we do exist. But yeah, no, it's just, I feel like to come to another sort of big city club would probably be good for him in that sense, because I wouldn't say the surroundings change too much. Whereas obviously if you went to a Swansea, completely different country necessarily. So there you go. And obviously rules and restrictions over there are different. So that'll be a different lifestyle in itself. And then if you went to Barnsley, that's just, that's got an aura around it that's not particularly positive. So
I'm assuming, John, you're talking about Barnsley when you put here. I've got no idea. I'm just making an assumption here.
Yeah, it was probably the best game of the weekend. Actually, I don't know if you've seen the highlights. So go on there.
I have, yeah.
Cup highlight. It was absolutely wild. The goals were brilliant as well. I have to say, we are slating Barnsley, but they scored a good couple of goals there.
Barrow's Ollie Banks channeling his inner Ronaldo. If you haven't seen that clip of a Barnsley fan, go look at him. He thinks he's fucking Ronaldo, and then bangs it top in. Yeah.
I have seen that clip. Before I move on, just obviously to the last section of the show, talking about respective clubs, I just want to get an idea, because it's not something United necessarily do in terms of incomings. It's mainly outgoings we do with loan deals. What it's like as a fan of a club that might have quite a few loan deals, and kind of the attachment that you might have to certain players, and when they leave. I can see, Amy, I saw your tweets when Laird obviously got moved on. I'll come to you first on Amy then. What is it like kind of having these loan players? Because there is that kind of thing, I would have thought, that you get an attachment to them and then they move away and it's like you don't see them play for you again.
Oh, absolutely. Like Ethan Laird's a perfect example. Like he was, when some players just really fit in and they become really like pivotal, and there's lots of media around them, and there's selfie videos of them, thanking the fans, all that sort of stuff. But like loads of players come to mind, like Mark Gahey last season. We were all obsessed with him. He was just such a brilliant defender, and and then it's like Chelsea sell him and Crystal Palace have him. You sort of go, oh, bye then. Like it's quite sad, and it is part of it being a Championship fan, because it, like you say, like loans come in and out. Your players go out, you bring players in, and and you can think of Conor Gallagher, Morgan Gibbs-White, Mark Gahey, like three of ours in the last couple of years. Instantly, you go, oh my God, that they're good players. They're all doing well. And you sort of think, oh, imagine if we had you now, imagine. Ryan Brewster, for example, he was another one. He was doing so well. And then he moved and nothing happened. And I felt sorry for him. And you just think, it is quite hard. It is hard.
I imagine, Tom, it's the same for you, obviously, because Chong wasn't necessarily recalled. It was recalled because of an injury. So it's even worse then. It's not necessarily like anyone's decision. It was forced almost.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, thankfully, he's technically still on loan with us. We're just paying less now, which is nice. Especially, obviously, a nice gesture from United, especially when we don't really have a pot to piss in anyway. So, yeah. But no, I actually remember a few days after Chong's injury had come out, I was out clubbing with a few friends, and I'd had a few drinks, and then the tears started flowing, and I was singing "Chong will tear you apart" again in the middle of the club. So yeah, I was quite sad about his injury, but I think that just shows how important he was to this season's Blues team. Certainly my favourite player this season. So yeah, it's sad, especially when it's not really by choice, especially when it's from playing a 5-yard pass in training. It's not even like it's from a match injury or anything. You know, there was a solid purpose for it. He's just played a 5-yard pass in training. Not only that, it wasn't even in a drill. It was just to kick the ball back onto the pitch. You know, he just walked off after it apparently and went to kick it back into play, and that's happened. But that's football, really. Anything can happen at any time. But it's just classical that something like that would happen to us. So yeah, no, it is what it is. I don't really think Blues have ever had, other than, to be honest, I don't think we've ever had that sort of situation where a player's had to be recalled and we're sad about it, other than Dion Sanderson. This is probably the first time it's happened to Blues. Obviously, with Swansea, I know you had Conor Gallagher when he was sort of ripped from that Charlton side, and then went to you lot. So you're probably on the positive end of that in a sense.
Yeah.
But you've had to kiss goodbye to some good loan players like Ryan Brewster and Mark Gahey. I could only dream of Blues having players that good, to be honest. So there we are.
We need to start buying them though. This is Swansea's downfall. You know, are we too reliant on loans? I mean, you could do a whole other podcast.
We're the same.
Yeah,
we're exactly the same. I think a lot of our fan base get really angry at how many loans we bring in, to be honest, because it never feels like we're actually building anything.
So. Isn't it? It's temporary.
Yeah, exactly. You don't feel like you're going to progress because you know you're just going to have to replace them with another loan the next season. So yeah, it's exciting to watch players grow, but sometimes it gets frustrating, unfortunately. It was sad to see Dion Sanderson go, especially after probably being our best defender this season. But Bowyer has said the door is open. If Wolves players return from AFCON a little bit early, then hopefully we could get Sanderson back. So it'd be actually really interesting to see Sanderson and Mengi in a partnership, two very quick athletic defenders, probably next to or beside a big Mark Roberts, who, funnily enough, we signed from Barnsley for £2 million and was captain of Barnsley when they got promoted. So there we are. And he's adjusted to Second City life fairly well and said that Birmingham is his home now. So I don't blame him. There we are. I'll stop Barnsley bashing now.
We're going to have to get a show sorted just talking about Barnsley. There's a question coming from Stu before I move on. I don't know whether you want to jump on the back of this one, just talking about like kind of. I can't remember which one of you mentioned about the youth academy not being the best. Obviously, Stu's talking there. You know, money's not always the excuse. I mean, it helps if you can have more scouts and more people out and about, recruiting these younger players. But I don't know whether if you do want to touch on that one.
Yeah, happily. I'll let you go first, Amy.
No, I would say, the Swansea Academy is successful. I think it's more that, if over time it's becoming more successful. But, you've got Dan James and Joe Allen. There's all these players. If you look at them, you go, oh, they were there. I think it's just a case of, often they move on as well. Dan James, off they go. They go. But I don't know. I think there needs to be more emphasis on that. Yes, I think the academy and the under 23s, but since Russell Martin's come in for us, he's paid a lot of attention to the academy, which you want that from your manager, don't you? Apparently he's been going to the games, and you just go, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, he's interested in what could be coming through the system, so maybe that's a step in the right direction for us.
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting question, to be fair. I could give you an easy answer on behalf of Blues, to be honest. Despite Birmingham being a fairly big city, it holds quite a few clubs. And unfortunately, those quite a few clubs tend to be better than the club that I support, is the best way to put it. So, you've got West Brom, who were in and out the Premier League, Wolves and Villa, who are now established Premier League sides. Obviously, Villa have all the history they have anyway. Wolves, very, very solid Premier League outfit now. Yeah. So when, you're scouting local talent, more than likely the best players are going to get pinched by a Villa and a Wolves, and even a West Brom, to be honest. And then we sort of take what's left. Yeah. And that is the top and bottom of it. In fairness to our academy, it is actually getting better. We've just got promoted to a Category A academy. So now I believe we're playing in the PDL2. So, the academy is improving, which is great. big step for us. And I think obviously Jude Bellingham was a big part of that. And I think Jude Bellingham is a good example, actually, because we realistically only had him in our academy because he was a Birmingham City fan and his entire family are Blues fans. So that obviously works to our advantage. If he wasn't a Blues fan, he wouldn't be in our academy. I can assure you of that. Either we'd have signed him up and he'd have been pinched by Dortmund a long time ago, or even Liverpool or someone like that, because they were all sniffing around for a while before he even made his first team debut. So, yeah, or you never know, he might not have even come to our academy. He could have gone to Villa or somewhere like that. So, yeah, and we do actually sell a lot of our youth products before they even break into the first team. We sell them to Premier League sides like Bournemouth or Liverpool. Well, Bournemouth not anymore, but we did sell a few there a couple of years ago when they were in the Prem. So yeah, but it is what it is. However, this season we have got a lot of youth in the team because of our shortage on players, and particularly Jordan James, absolute baller. Never knew anything about him until this season. A lot of the coaches have said he was a quiet one that no one expected to be doing as well as he is, but he's been fantastic. Really exciting prospect, and I'm glad we're using the youth more, but it's not quite up
isn't
to...
it? And it is.
Yeah.
Tough ones get nicked. So
Exactly. So, our biggest problem is that we have so many big clubs in the Midlands to compete with, sadly.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, obviously, in your both clubs' current situation, obviously at the moment, younger players are not necessarily the priority, I wouldn't have thought. And before we briefly talk about United, I'm just going to ask you both a simple question again, putting you on the spot. Obviously, you're both fairly near the drop. It's safe to say, I think you're both 5 points above it on level points. I think Swansea have played 2 games less, though. Can you see your obviously, you're not going to say yes, I don't think, to this, but do you think you'll avoid the drop this season? Do you think you've got enough? Obviously, this window could be very important in terms of getting the results. Derby, I think Wayne Rooney is doing a brilliant job, but whether they've got enough to get up at the, so it might only become a 1-horse race with Reading, I think it is down there. Yeah. Amy, I'll come to you first. And obviously, Swansea's season, where you're at, can you avoid relegation from here?
Yeah, I think I can be confident in saying it'll be fine. Like we've only played 22 games, and a lot of the teams above us are on 24 to 26. So I know everyone always says, yeah, but it's not points on the board. I know that, but the form was dropping off a little bit for whatever reason. But I think we have the quality comparatively to a lot of other teams. Like Peterborough, for example. But we've mentioned Paul Barnsley. Derby with that points deduction. Even Cardiff. I will bash Cardiff till the cows come home. But we're a much better side. We're much better. We play better football. It's just about fixing the problem at the moment, which is the defence. We just haven't got the pace in the defence to play the way we're playing. And I mean, if we can pick up a replacement for Laird and another centre back in the next week, I think we'll be absolutely fine. Yeah.
And for yourself, Tom?
I definitely think Swansea will stay up. Yeah, I think for us, we should realistically. I think we're lucky in the sense that this championship season is probably the most open championship season there's been for a long time. So we're lucky in that regard. We should stay up realistically, but it's down to injuries. We get any more injuries, then the bad run will continue. So until we get more first team players back fit, you won't really see many results from Blues at the moment. Or if we probably need to make more signings realistically. At the moment, the form we're in, you probably think that we could slip in, but I do think the teams below us are worse. I don't think Derby are going to pull off the impossible, even though I kind of would like them to, because it'd be interesting. Yeah. I kind of want them to, I kind of don't, but it's I don't know. It'll be interesting, but I do think we'll avoid it, but definitely not as comfortably as Swansea will. I think that's a given. But it just depends, who we sign, who comes back from injury, how quick that is. But no, I do think the teams below us, especially with Reading just being smashed 7-0 tonight by Fulham, if you didn't know already. Yep, I literally just saw that on my phone and I couldn't believe my eyes, but it brings me delight.
Actually, I think they are. I think Reading are in big trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I wouldn't put it past Peterborough to put up a few results if they could. I mean, they battered us 3-0. Jesus Christ, that was a bleak day. But hey ho, you never know. Championship's a crazy place. I'd like Reading to go down. I've always thought they were tin pot anyway. So
yeah, they're a bit of a dull club in my opinion, and they managed to beat us, so I want them to go. Yeah,
exactly. Who likes Reading? Do you know what? I prefer Barnsley. So do I.
God, this show's had a turnaround now.
It has. It's bash Reading now.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, actually. I think both, just from what I've seen, I think both of you probably will stay up. I think Derby's a given to go down, even though I would love them to. As United fans, I think we all obviously want Rooney to keep them up. That would just
He's the only reason I want Derby to stay up, just because I love Wayne Rooney, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think looking at Barnsley and Peterborough as well, it's going to be. It'll be bad if you do go down, I think, from those positions.
Yeah.
Moving on, obviously, just to the last, kind of 5-10 minutes of the show, just talk about another bad team at the moment in Manchester United.
I think even we could give you a run for your money, to be honest.
you probably could at the moment. Last time you were on this show, Amy, you said that it was a lack of tactics, obviously, that was crippling us. But obviously, you've said that the players deserve some blame as well. And obviously, we've got a tactical manager in. And we're probably playing worse than what we were, albeit we're picking up some results now. So, from an outsider, what is going on? Because as United fans, we can't fathom what we're watching, week in, week out at the moment.
Yeah, I understand. It is baffling, and United being my second team, I find it hard to watch. And I think having watched United, since I was a kid, the difference between the teams gone by and the team now is they just do not look like a team. I don't know whether it's the people, whether it's like what's gone on over the last year or so, whether it's pressure. I don't know what it is. They just don't look like they're all on the same page. And I think because of that, individual performances dropping off. Rashford just looks lost. Fernandes looks a bit sloppy, and I don't know. I think you looked a lot stronger. Was it last season when you sort of, Pogba was there, and there was just something about the system that worked a bit better. And like you say, even though you've got a tactician in, it's still nothing's gelling. It just doesn't look like it's working. And individual performances again, like Luke Shaw looks pretty awful. Harry Maguire has his, horrendous moments. McTominay, I think, is rubbish. Maybe you just need an overhaul. You need an overhaul. I don't know the answer. If I knew, someone else would know, and it would be fixed. So.
100%. If Maze is still watching this, by the way, she's going to love the fact you called McTominay rubbish. I really like McTominay. I got to be honest, but
I like Scott McSauce. I think he's done him dirty there. But that's only because he scored against Villa, though. So there we are.
I just every time I watch him, I think,
He's a bit slow.
Loses the ball a lot in the middle. You just can't do that when you're not on form, So I don't know. It's tough.
I'm hoping. Well, same as me. Then no United fan, I think, knows fully at the moment. And Tom, same question to yourself. I think you were very critical of Ollie, obviously, when you came on, but again said the same kind of sentiment that the players need to take some blame as well. Has your viewpoint changed on United from the outside, or?
Yeah, a little bit, I suppose. I think, I love Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as a character, but I thought he was a terrible manager, still do. But, it's with United, there's so many different things you could say, but there is obviously one clear solution to fix this side, and that is build around Phil Jones. It's quite simple. Build around Big Phil. No, to be honest, I how do you even explain Man United at the moment? I actually watched that Sir Alex Ferguson film not long ago. The sort of documentary movie thing that he made with his sons. Obviously, they feature quite heavily in that. But it's just crazy how much Man United has fallen since those days. But then you don't see characters like Sir Alex managing United anymore. You've not had anyone like that. Probably, I thought it annoys me because I wish Moyes was given more time back then. But unfortunately, it was sort of, you were still sort of a Premier League title expectation team at that point. Those results weren't good enough at the time. Maybe the football wasn't great, but I think you take Moyes back in a heartbeat at the moment. Whereas with Rangnick, it surprised me because his resume is so impressive that he's not. Although you have, like you say, you've picked up results, but you've only managed to beat Norwich 1-0 with a penalty, which on paper is pretty despicable. But I don't know where to even begin to highlight what you could fix or solve. But one key element from watching United the other day was they look shattered all the time. Literally look exhausted. Exactly.
Mentally drained, possibly. Maybe the pressure and this ongoing, like, it's not working, let's try something else, let's try this. Maybe it just has got to them and they're just kind of walking towards
fed up.
No, it's just, they're fed up, frustrated.
I know, it's so tiring having to do the job you're actually paid to do. It's like, go on, carry on.
No, I was just going to bring up this comment. Andrew's exactly right. If you were to ask 100 United fans what's wrong, you get 100 different answers. I think you would, because everyone's got their own view. It's the manager, it's the players, it's this player, it's that player, it's Ronaldo's fault, it's Ed Woodward's fault. It's so many different people's kind of. Everyone's got their own view, but for me personally, it's just we're just a mess. I think I agree with both what you're saying. We look shattered all the time. We don't look like a team. So it's going to be a long rest of the season. I mean, can you
one thing and fix and start with it rather than trying to do everything at once? It's like go back to basics. I think is what needs to happen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, can you guys give us some positive on this channel and say what can we hope for? Do you think, as United fans, can we win a trophy this season?
No. But when it gets better, it's going to be so sweet and it's going to be amazing. Like because this isn't going to last forever. It's Man United. This isn't going to last forever. All teams have dips, right? You're not up there all the time. But I think when it happens, it will be magic. I believe that. It will happen and it will be like, oh my gosh, what is happening to this club? We're finally back to where we're meant to be. I think that, and it will be amazing. I just don't know when that's going to be.
I love that. I love it.
See, it's interesting you say that, because I thought that was going to be this season when you battered Leeds in the first game of the season. I thought, oh yes, United are back. Here we go. I'm all for this. Let's hop on this bus and see where it goes. But unfortunately not. You've dropped off like you keep doing every season at the moment. But you could say, oh, you need a world-class manager. Obviously, you're linked with Poch. You bring Poch in. Did Poch win anything at Spurs? No. Yes, he's a good manager. Do I think he's what Man United need? Again, no. But I think what Man United need isn't out there at the moment.
And I think it's someone younger as well. I think all these, these people who have their ways of playing football, I think Man United are going to have to kind of almost start again, I feel. And you look at someone like, I know it was rumoured, but like someone like Brendan Rodgers, you think, he's possibly the right kind of guy, eventually. Maybe not now, but to kind of just rebuild and find that like Man United identity again from the start.
It is depressing. You mentioned that Leeds game there, Tom. I was at that game and I remember I jumped on the live stream that outside Old Trafford, and I was just like, we're going to win everything this year. That feeling after that game was so good because we'd just beaten Leeds 5-1. It was the first game with fans back. We had the Varane moment, obviously being unveiled on in front of the fan. Everything was so good, and then since then, it's especially because last season we'd come second, got to a cup final. We felt close. We'd signed Ronaldo, Sancho, Varane, 3 positions that you could argue we needed. And if anything, we've got much worse this season than we did last year. So I think you are right. I think the players are probably devoid of all confidence now that you can see that Rashford in particular, I think, is an absolute shadow of himself, and it's
such a shame. Such a shame.
100%.
It's interesting because I feel like I could talk about Man United forever. To be honest, they're such an intriguing team to talk about. To be fair, so I'm not surprised you do well on this fan channel for numbers, because there's so much to say. Other than obviously being one of the biggest, if not the biggest, football club in the world, there is just so much to say about Man United. So no, but I said it last time I came on this channel. You look at the old Sir Alex teams, there wasn't that many superstars. They were generally just a team. Like I say, don't know how you managed to win a Premier League title with Anderson or Darren Fletcher.
Fletcher was not a great footballer either. Like, let's remember, he wasn't great, but he still was successful. So there you go.
Exactly. And Sir Alex got rid of Pogba originally for a reason. You just went completely against that decision in the end and brought him back. And it's just been a saga in itself ever since. Because do you know what? I get really sick of seeing random tweets all the time on Twitter every week of Paul Pogba is considering his future. And it's like, no one cares anymore. We see this every week. Like, just bore off. I just can't be bothered anymore. Like, why aren't we seeing Anderson considering massive Man United return as assistant manager, or something, or something crazy like that? But I don't know. Obviously, I saw not long ago about the Man United players being bothered about the later training times. I thought that was utterly pathetic, if true. Obviously, I'm assuming it's alleged, so I'm going to go with that. But if that's a problem, that's baffling, and that shows how bad the Man United mentality is now compared to what it should be.
And it's a shame. It's a shame. They've always been a team, I felt like, maybe I'm biased because I've always kind of supported them and loved watching them, but it is that like heart, that attitude, the mentality of like, we play for Man United. It's like, that's a special thing. And it's like, you've got Sancho and Rashford and all these like popular footballers, but it's like they don't seem to have that like love for the club in the way that, you know, Paul Scholes, Wes Brown, like all of those. They just lived and breathed it, and it's and like it's kind of what Chelsea have now. You know, those players at Chelsea, it just works, right? And that is what you would vision, you know, Man United to kind of be like, but it's just not happening.
Long story short, you need badge tappers, and you don't have any badge tappers. So there we are. That's the bottom line. Badge tappers.
That's a good way to end that, I think. There, we need badge tap. I'm going to clip that up and get that put out on Twitter. Before we wrap up, then, if you want to obviously shout out your social. In fact, actually, before we do that, Amy, do you want to talk about the kind of we spoke about it last time, and it is an important movement that has happened. Obviously, the Premier League clubs, obviously Everton, are now involved. Hopefully, all the clubs back this. But do you want to talk briefly about Her Game too, and kind of the growth that's doing and the good work that it's doing?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously, please do come and check out our socials and everything. You can see our original campaign video. But yeah, we're just really developing the campaign. We're currently setting up actually as an official CIC business, which will enable us to do a lot more education programs, building funds for grassroots football and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the biggest news obviously was our Boxing Day announcement, which was a partnership with Everton. They've been absolutely brilliant, I have to say. They've wanted to take this campaign on and work with us long term. You know, we're talking a year at a time at the moment with them, which is just brilliant because we don't want to be a box tick. We don't want to be just an International Women's Day thing. We want to be like an integral part of a football club, whether that's like from the fans' perspective, the female staff members, the female side of the football, you know, Everton women as well. And the response has been just amazing. And, you know, we have some other calls coming up with some Premier League teams, which is really exciting, and lots more to come. So stay tuned. And I'm working on Man United. They're my target. I've said I'm taking Man United. I'm gonna hopefully it will come at some point, and we can do a podcast on it hopefully at some point.
Definitely, 100%. And if you haven't already, checked the Twitter out. It literally is at Her Game 2 on Twitter. And the kits, by the way, are brilliant.
Yeah,
definitely go and check those out. Tom, where can people find you, and anything else you want to shout out?
To be honest, these days I'm just doing anything that comes along. I'm planning my next sort of move for what I want to do, because I'd like to sort of set up my own channel and stuff. But I keep flirting with different ideas. You know, do I go something that's a bit more generalised rather than just blues? So, you know, Premier League, Championship, or would I just go for something solely blues? Obviously, I still do occasionally the Blues Focus podcast where I just talk purely blues. So yeah, I suppose watch this space. You never know, something might come up. I've definitely been thinking about it for a long time, but I also want to get the right people involved with it as well. You know, I've got a few people that are up for doing something like this. So I'm building my own little team of Avengers in a weird and wonderful way to start up a new platform, and hopefully the next time I come on, if you'll have me back after all my Barnsley bashing and badge slapping. Yeah. Then hopefully I could possibly promote something new. But for now, just follow my app, which is probably there on the screen. T_Oxland276.
Yeah, definitely go and check that out. And Amy, your Twitter?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's backwards, isn't it?
I know. I was all over the place.
Yeah, if you want to check out my unpopular football opinions that always cause a stir, then come follow me.
Yeah, definitely make sure you go and check these two out. They're going to be back on the channel definitely before the end of the season as my championship representatives, because this needs to be a show actually talking about the championship, and there needs to be more, you know, I think championship coverage and things like that, because I actually really enjoy talking about it, whether that's obviously the lone players or just the championship in general. So these two, you know, will definitely be back on the channel. But yeah, stay tuned across the week. If you missed obviously the content the last few days, Dharmesh from Sky was obviously on with us yesterday. Go and check that one out. And we've obviously got the preview for the return fixture, obviously at Villa Park at the weekend. Hopefully a better performance. But yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.